Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Resilient Voices and Beyond. I'm so excited for this episode that I have for you guys today. I believe this is episode 47. It has been a long time coming, but I continue to feel you guys' support and reassurance, and I just want to say I thank you guys for that. Most of you guys know that kind of went into this not knowing if it was going to be received well, or if this was the time for it. And you guys have been greatly supporting me, and not just only me, but who I've had on here too. So thank you. Without further ado, because you guys know I can talk for a little bit, I'm going to have my guest introduce himself. Go right ahead.
Thank you, Michael. And again, I appreciate the opportunity to come in here, and I feel honored to be in this space with you. For anyone who is in earshot of my voice, my name is Demetrius Starling. I am the Children's Services Agency Executive Director for the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
Thank you. You guys know I like to dive deep in in the person's experience, first before we get into the expertise. So my first question for you is, if you could walk us through, how did this journey towards what you do now started, and where did it start?
Oh, great question, Michael. So I started off in the private agency realm, working for Vista Maria, a school for girls, years ago. One of my first jobs out of college when I graduated from Ferris State University. And from there, I was able to get the basic understanding or foundation in regards to child welfare. But I was seeing the back end of the work, right? So I saw that, what the girls were going through as far as traumatic experiences, the things that led them to be within that particular agency. And from there, it was my life's dream and goal to work for the state so I can be on the front end and hopefully impact the lives of those youth before it even got to the point of them being removed from their homes. So, by the grace of God, I was able to apply for the department, and I was hired as a protective services worker as my first position within a department. I found that to be one of my more fruitful, one of my more enjoyable positions for a number of reasons. I was able to touch the lives of these youth. I was also able to really hear the voices of the families that were being impacted by traumatic events, be able to give them some guidance and support, and also kind of track their lives going forward, whether it be me opening up a CPS case or in some unfortunate situations when I had to file a petition and ask for removal of these kids, I would still be there as a support figure for them to try to work towards permanency and reunification with those families in conjunction with the foster care worker that had that particular case. One of the things, Michael, that I saw as a CPS worker that really troubled me was the disproportionate number of kids of color who were coming into care. And I looked at our own policies, our own practices, and from my chair as a worker, I just said to myself, man, if I could be in a position of leadership to hopefully change or transform the system, that's what I want to do. So I worked steadfastly to get to this point. That was 22 years ago. I worked my way up throughout the ranks of children's services as a supervisor, as an analyst, program manager, district manager, also becoming a county director in a rural county that also kind of gave me the ins and outs of what happens in a rural county setting. So I felt as if, I was a well-rounded candidate that saw both the plight of urban families and communities, but also from the rural perspective as well, that prepared me for this position that I am now. So I feel really blessed, and I feel like this is a very opportunistic time for us as a department and as a child welfare system to make some of those impactful changes that I envisioned over 2 decades ago.
Wow. You dropped a lot of nuggets right there, and it's very powerful because very rarely do you have well-rounded individuals in positions as yourself, and the fact that you purposely wanted to be able in these different positions to be able to see all ins and outs. There's no secret that there's disparities between Black and brown youth that come into the system. There's no secret that there's disparities between private agencies and the state agencies and what have you. And you've been in that position to be able to see where those gaps lie. But going into my next question, because I know you've been on a journey, what are some of the barriers or hills you had to climb, whether it be academically or personally, on your pursuit to what you do now as the Executive Director of Children's Services?
Oh, I love that question. So from a personal perspective, I think some of the barriers that I had to overcome was the mindset and the perception that a man of color, or especially one who, relatively speaking, in comparison to previous directors, was coming into this role at a much younger part of their career. We've tend to see some folks that are in these positions, with the exception maybe of Ju Chang before me, the folks that are at the end of their career, right? Or folks that, maybe have had like 25, 30 years within the systems or different systems outside of children's services. And, for me to come up through this particular agency at the age that I am, and also being a Black man, I think that the perception was that I was not quite ready for this, and that I needed a little bit more seasoning before I was able to transition into this position. So it's been quite a struggle. I've had a couple of doors slammed in my face as far as applying for positions and not getting those, but I was, I didn't give up. I didn't, hunker down and say, you know what, I'm done. I'm not going to, try to achieve my goals and my visions. I had vision boards. I had, moments that I had to sit back and really reevaluate if I needed to take a new trajectory. But at the end of the day, I knew that I was obligated to follow through with my vision, and also that I made a commitment to myself and to my community and to my family to achieve these goals, which I did. From a work perspective, I think some of the barriers that have existed over the years and even now is getting that buy-in from all stakeholders, whether it be community members, whether it be our private agency community, our legislators, the courts. I think that and it's not necessarily a bad thing, I think we as a child welfare system have been so used to us operating in a particular fashion. We get these allegations of child abuse or neglect. We go and do an investigation. We come to a conclusion as far as substantiation of the case. We do a removal or opening of the case, and we hope for the best. When I think that we really need to re-envision our system. And what I mean by that is, I've had a vision, Michael, over the last 15 years of my career, that we need to be more prevention-based and preservation-based versus us going into these homes and saying that we are the leading authorities on what that family needs, right? We need to have more buy-in from our families, more buy-in from the community, and say, how can we come together and front load services and support and guidance to these families on the front end, and work more upstream versus being proactive. So that vision I had, like I said, maybe 10 or 15 years ago, I worked with my, at that time, leadership and said, hey, can I come up with a model to do just a standalone prevention program? And I was able to, write a business model. I was able to hire a person to do that prevention work, and it was successful. It was, but we all know that in some instances, it's hard for us to allocate resources and time and people for things that have not occurred. And that's the whole prevention mindset. Things that have not occurred, you're going to be pouring time and resources in. So for you to go and say, well, I'm trying to prevent child abuse and neglect, well, how will you prove that? And it's not an easy conversation, and it's not an easy ask for a lot of folks, because you have to show some really resounding outcomes and results for you to continue to implement some of those practices. But now that we're at the place where We have federal buy-in. We have folks that are really supporting this stance, such as Casey Family, which has been a staunch advocate and supporter of ours over the years, that have provided us with the template, the resources, and the guidance to get us there. I'm really, really happy and optimistic about the future of our department.
Awesome. Wow. I think about, that first component about the question I just asked you about the barriers when you mentioned shifting the mindset and what have you for yourself, but also, showing others, I put in time, I put in the work, and I remember, not to compare, but I remember, Obama coming in. They told him he was too young,
Right,
to,
right.
to be president, and what have you.
One of my biggest role models. Yeah.
Yeah, we know as a community, African Americans and Black and Brown people, we know that there was many other things why they said that. But it speaks to the resiliency and perseverance that you had to be able to bridge those gaps, because one thing that I've seen as a person who spent 11 years in the child welfare system and seen the juvenile side and the foster care side of things, and then aging out and working in the arena of private agencies and with the state agencies, is the evolution. In my time, even growing up to even being an adult, is the evolution of it and those gaps continuously being there. But one thing I can say personally is I'm honored because throughout this time of having this podcast, I've been able to interview a few of your coworkers who are African American as well. And for the first time for myself, I've been able to see people in the state agency that resembles me culturally,
Right.
and as far as my skin color. And we don't speak enough about how that plays a part in people being receptive. But in the African American community, and I think about counties like Wayne County, it's already hard with the stigmas and labels that are placed, like, oh, these people are just here to take my kids.
Right.
But when you have someone that represents who they are, it's easier, it's softer to hear, like, okay, maybe you're not, just here to take my kids. Maybe you are here to help me out. Maybe you are here to bring me some preventive services.
Absolutely.
So I can appreciate that. My next question, and I think you kind of answered this, is what has been your why in doing this work?
Yeah, another great question. So the why with me really goes back to how can I impact families and communities of color that I thought were really being traumatized by some of our systems and some of our practices. And I want to be clear to anyone who can hear me is that just because I say that, just because I show, affirmation or love towards Black and Brown communities, does not mean I disregard other communities. But, the numbers do not lie. Over the years, the over policing of our department and communities of color, the way that we remove and place kids in care at a larger rate than other demographics, the way our kids of color remain in care for longer than other kids, particularly white kids, that has been a huge concern for me. And so overall, yes, we need to revamp and enhance and re-enhance our system, but we also need to be very cognizant of the fact that our systems that we have in place, in a lot of instances, have institutional tenets of racism, embedded. So we need to look at ways to, of course, redesign the front end response to our allegations of abuse and neglect that's free from bias and distinguishes between crisis and actual need for family supports and support services and support. So that's my why. My why is being someone who can be the face, the model of change within a department, but also give folks, whether it be our customers or even our staff, some sense of he did it, so why can't we? He's operating in our best interest, so we need to do more. We need to push forward, we need to pull our weight. We need to do just as much as he's doing to change the trajectory of our department. So that's my why. I definitely want to be more of an impactful. I don't want to, in my career, 10 or 15 years from now and look back and say, well, you could have, or you should have. I want, my story to say he did.
And I'm on mute. But that's powerful in itself, that statement in itself, he did it. If I did it, you can too. Which is a good segue into my next question here. What does it mean to you to be an African American leader, role model in child welfare right now?
It means the world to me. I got to say that in my lifetime, not only within our department, but also with the private agencies that we work with, there have not been a lot of African American or just men of color in positions of power or in leadership. And I think that for me, it enhances the need for me to be more forthright. It enhances the need for me to be the one that stays the course, that does not give up on what my basic principles are, and be that voice of reason and rationale that others can look to for be a beacon of hope. So again, whether it be customers, whether it be staff, whether it be outside entities and stakeholders, I think that I have, it's a heavy lift for me to be in a position where I know that I have to walk the walk and talk the talk. And one thing, Michael, that I hope that I'm showing or demonstrating with folks is that I'm still not afraid to roll up my sleeves and do the work with them. I'm not going to sit in this position and have this sense of complacency and being comfortable and sit in my office and, kind of have this mindset that I'm just going to give rules and give direction and not be a part of the change. If I do, then I'm not doing what I said that I was going to do, or being steadfast like I said I was in some of my previous approaches that I've had with you and others. I need to be that voice, be that face out there in the community. So that's what I live for. I think every day that I'm in this position, I thank God that I'm able to continue to do this work, not only for, my community, but for my family, and, just be someone that everyone that knows me, who has worked for me or worked with me, continue to be proud of the work that I'm doing.
Thank you. And I've had the privilege of talking with you a number of times, and working with you on a couple different things, and hearing some of the plans and action. And one thing I can say to the listeners, it speaks to you as an individual in this position when your approaches, I need to speak to the people who experienced it, it's nice and all that we all have our degrees and everything, but if I don't speak to the people who have been in it, what are we doing this for? And that's one thing that I can say from my own experience that you have done, and I can appreciate that as an alumni of CARE. My next question is, as we know, there's federal and state has embarked on a lot of new initiatives and reforms. If you don't mind me asking, could you speak to some of the initiatives and reforms that are in works right now, and why are they happening now, or why are they needed?
Absolutely. So, one of the things I'm really proud of right now is the work that we're doing with the Michigan Child Welfare Improvement Task Force, and some of the recommendations that they're providing myself and my leadership team. And basically, I was able to touch base with them and, provide them with a little bit of guidance as far as what I wanted to see. And I started off the conversation by giving them my priorities. And my 4 priorities, Michael, and I believe that you may have heard these before. So, forgive me if it sounds like a broken record, but for your listeners, I'm not sure if they are aware, but my 4 basic priorities are: 1, to keep children safe with their families. So there's a lot of work that's being done in 2 of my bureaus, in-home and out-of-home services, where we're looking at different ways to keep kids safe with their families in their communities, such as looking at a more robust array of community placements, whether it be kinship care, whether it be IO placements, something outside of congregate care and general foster homes, but also what we can do again to kind of work upstream and be more prevention based and keep kids safe in their family, with their families, in their homes, with prevention based services. So that's one priority. My second priority was to, if and when kids had to be removed and placed into care, how are we keeping them safe? That's our obligation. That's our duty, to keep kids safe while they're in care. So many folks have heard of maltreatment in care, and what happens with those particular situations. We've also heard of the unfortunate situations where kids who are in care are unfortunately hurt, or in some unfortunate incidents, they lose their lives. So as a department, it's incumbent on us to keep these kids safe. So that's my second priority. My third priority is timely reunification and permanency of our families and our kids. It's incumbent on us that if we have to remove kids from their homes, that we're working hard, diligently on a day-to-day basis to get those kids home safe as quickly as possible. So whether it be additional supports, mental health services, whether it be us providing more community-based services, having more over-the-shoulder support with these families to do just that, working with the courts, working with other providers, then we're going to do just that. And lastly, and probably most importantly, ensuring equitable practices in child welfare and our child welfare practices. So that's us taking a deeper dive into our own practices and policies. Like I stated, Michael, it's to me, it's evident. It should be evident to a lot of folks that our own policies are biased. Some of our own policies have racial implications. And the question I think some people ask me, like, which one are you talking about? And my answer to them is, which one isn't? So we have so many policies and procedures that have biases that we're kind of going through right now with the help of our private partners, with the help of our legislative partners, to go through and say, okay, does this have a race equity lens to it? Does this have bias in it? Is it free of racism? Because we were starting to make our whole department more anti-racist across the board. So those are my 4 basic priorities, and I gave those to the Michigan Child Welfare Task Force. And as a result, they are working on recommendations for our department to adhere to, whether it be looking to redo some of our SDM, our structured decision-making tools. How do we increase kinship care with communities of color? How do we redefine abuse and neglect? Because as we all know, sometimes that conflation of poverty can be looked at as neglect. No, it is just, in some instances, it's just that particular family or community needs an extra hand from our department to help them get through some rough times. That should not be a reason in every instance for us to have overall CPS involvement. So those are just a couple of things. Of course, we're working with the Michigan Child Welfare Task Force also on how we can tamp down on kids who are placed in congregate care facilities and shorten their stay if they have to go there. So it's a lot of great work that's being done with the Michigan Child Welfare Task Force. And I'm so proud and just energized by some of the recommendations that they've been providing so far.
Wow, thank you for that. And one thing that I hear, from those 4, recommendations that you have passed on, and that you're trying to work on in the state of Michigan, for me, and in a realistic standpoint, is having the uncomfortable conversation that needed to be held, and working on the issues that we have swept under the rug, and what have you. So I can truly appreciate that. I've been able to see some of the efforts already, as a person who have aged out, the support that has went out for youth that are in care, with the stimulus check, with the Division X and what have you, and all these different avenues for people who have been in care, trying to make sure that they get into foster homes, and keeping that pressure applied, that if they're not needed to be in those congregate care places, we need to find a home for them,
Right.
or we need to find another place. And those are some things that, wasn't happening years ago that I see now that are happening. My next question, and you may have answered this a little bit, but what are you hoping to see to be the outcomes of these initiatives? What is the all out, this is what I would like to see in the perfect world as these outcomes start to be developed and pushed out. These initiatives, my bad.
Gotcha. So from my perspective, I would like to see this new 21st century child welfare system that we have been talking about since day one of my administration. And, again, with the assistance and support from Casey family, I think we're starting to see some of those changes. And part of that, that the outcome that I'm looking to see and that the leadership team is looking to see is for us as a department to be an anti-racist department, for us to see a drop in overall foster kids coming to foster care, but more specifically, kids of color who are coming to care. Also re-envision how we help and support families from different backgrounds or demographics. So we, of course, sometimes we land on the discussion of Black and brown, but it's such more than that. We're talking about kids and families from LGBTQI communities. We're talking about our engagement and interaction and interface with tribal governments. We're talking about how we could be of more support to families and children with disabilities. We're looking at how we can be of more support to women. There's some, I don't have to go into it too much because you know how politically based it is, but stuff such as Roe versus Wade and other things that affect women within, our community. I would like to see all of that change because although that's not a child welfare related policy, it still affects our community. It still affects our families. So that's what I want to see. I want to see a whole re-envisioning of our department and our state. So when people look at the Department of Health and Human Services, they see a department that is truly there for their betterment. And I don't think that has been the case in years before. I think there's been a stigma about our department, especially with children's services, that we are more of a detriment than a help for them. And that's part of my vision. That's part of what my expected outcome is for the community at large to look at us in a whole different light, but also for us to actually put practices in place where it's not just optics, it's not just words. We're actually walking the walk and we're doing right by our families and our youth.
Awesome. And to add to what you said, there's an education component, because also, getting that information out there to these communities, because if all they know is, auntie and them, had this bad experience, and then they don't hear from the other side, this is what we're here to have to offer. This is some prevention services. This is some resources that we have. We're here to help, they only can take the narrative that's given, and that's why, one of the biggest reasons why creating this podcast, to be able to educate people on all sides, and to bring, to kind of do my part to bridge the gaps and the disparities, and help people see more so like MDHS at a different light, because unless, we come together in our avenues as, birth parents or foster parents, as alumni to make the system better, along with the initiatives that you guys are trying to push out, it won't work, both sides have to agree and work at it together. So I can definitely appreciate that. My next question, I only have a few left here, is as we know, there are many stigmas and labels surrounding mental health. What does taking care of your mental health in a professional sense look like? And how has that been throughout the years, adapting to what's happening in society and being in this very emotional field?
Yeah, so from a personal and professional standpoint, mental health and your own self-care means a lot. Uh, for me personally, being able to have folks that I can talk to when it comes to very difficult times, whether it be, family related issues or work related issues, is critical. And especially for a person of color, because as we all know and have heard, and the studies have shown this, is that when it comes to a person of color actually seeking help, there's a stigma attached. You're weak, you're soft, you just need to deal with it. And those are really antiquated ways of thinking about mental health. And that, in a lot of instances leads to, or has led to, folks either leaning on substances, like, using illicit drugs to kind of ease that pain, or, taking their own lives or hurting themselves or others when they are not seeking the help that they desperately need. So for me, I think it's important for me in this position to take time out, take time out and off from this position, just lean out, take a break, take a deep breath, and talk to those and lean on those who help support my mental health. And by all means, if folks feel like their level of anxiety or depression is so vast or great that the people that they're leaning on aren't the ones that they need to, that you need to seek out professional help. And that doesn't make you weak, that doesn't make you soft, that doesn't make you resilient or not resilient. Uh, but we definitely need to encourage that, not only with our customers, but with our staff, because some of the things that they're seeing right now, especially with the pandemic, are just amazingly profound.
Thank you for that. Um, my I want to kind of add a portion of that because you start to speak on it a little bit here, and I guess outside of your personal and professional experience with mental health, as the executive director of Children's Services, um, because as we have seen, as a person that has been in care, there's been numerous, turnovers and what have you. How are you implementing? Are there any initiatives to implement that to, incoming social workers, or, social workers that are still there? Because, unfortunately, with the influx, which is across the nation when it comes to state agencies, when there are less people, more caseloads or caseload shifts. So that can be stressful. And a lot of people, this is a very compassionate job, take that stuff home. So what are some initiatives that are happening to secure and protect those social workers, those CPS workers, foster care workers, licensing workers, in these instances with mental health, especially during COVID, if you don't mind me asking?
Absolutely, that's a great question. So we are working with, we have a couple of things that we do. So we share information on a monthly basis with all of our staff. So I have an all staff meeting every month where we do a virtual call and we share different resources. And one of the things that we try to highlight as much as possible is making sure you take time out for your own self-care. And we also provide information, whether it be working with ALEA, which is a contracted agency that we have that deals with self-awareness, self-care, and how to promote, overall well-being of our families and also for our staff. But for instance, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. So I just had a call, ironically enough, yesterday with all of my staff, and I shared some information and resources in regards to, going to www.mentalhealth.gov And we also provided information about a national suicide prevention hotline. We gave information about disaster relief and talked about how important it is for folks to take care of their own mental health. We also have a state employee service line where folks can go on our DHS page and look up ESP, employee services, and get connected to either a counselor or therapist that can help them through either a traumatic situation, or if they just need someone to talk to. We also make sure that they have information in regards to visiting the SAMHSA, the www.samhsa.gov website, to make sure that if they're not comfortable with actually talking to someone that's being provided through our employee line, that they can go through the SAMHSA line for some help. So we definitely lift that up every chance we get, Michael, and we make sure that they understand how important and paramount mental health awareness is, and also taking care of themselves. We also, of course, make sure that conversations occur with our families that we are engaging and encountering with, to make sure that they're taking care of their mental health well-being. So there are different agencies situated within our communities that we can refer folks out to, community mental health. We also look at how we can explore all possible sources of funding to support the development in a range of prevention services and mental health services to help reduce some of the need of CPS or foster care being involved with our families overall. So I think that although we do provide a list of resources and information, we can always learn, we can always grow in that aspect. Mental health is a scourge within our communities, whether it be from a staffing perspective or from a customer perspective, that we definitely need to continue to have a keen focus on.
Thank you for that. I just have, 3 more questions left for you. And this last question, I'm pretty sure hits home for a lot of people. COVID, has turned the world upside down. But as we know it, it's also highlighted a lot of things, such as in the foster care community, and these are just to name a few. Congregate care, what did that look like? What does it look like to be a social worker? Because I'm losing my train of thought here, but not a first responder, but I'm losing my train of thought, but to be someone that is out the gate, that's first there, which as we know, social workers and people who work for state agencies, they never stop working. Some of them the office changed from the office building to at home. Mm-hmm. So with those things being highlighted, and another piece that was highlighted throughout COVID was also the piece of vulnerability with sex trafficking and what have you, with foster youth being a very risky population, and also mental health and other components. So with all these different things being highlighted throughout COVID, plus how to best support our state agencies and the people that are working in these agencies, what has been that experience for yourself, but also what are some things that you may have had to kind of rearrange, because now we live in a totally different world than before COVID. Absolutely. Yeah. And also some things that in it because of COVID.
Yeah, really great questions. From a personal standpoint, it really affected me greatly, because at the onset of the pandemic, it touched my life personally, where one of my mother's best friends passed away from COVID, like in the first couple of months. Someone that I had known for 25, 30 years of my life, someone who to me was just as much as a family member as some of my blood family, affinity by blood family, who are like through blood affinity. So that in a sense, it kind of paralyzed me, because when I saw how it affected our family so closely, and then watching the news and seeing, Black and brown communities like Detroit and Flint and Saginaw, how many people of color were dying at such a high rate. It paralyzed me because I was scared, as most other folks, about what this means for us. And it really had me in a sense of, almost an out of body experience for the first couple of months. But at the same time, I couldn't help but to think about our folks in the field. So at that time, when the pandemic first started, I was a county director in St. Clair and Sanilac. So one of the things I try to do is to make sure that I stay connected with my staff, the folks who had to go out in the field, the folks who had to have boots on the ground. I did daily check-ins with those folks to make sure they were okay. They had the PPE that they needed. I still came in the office, make sure they had water and gloves and things of that sort, because I could only imagine what it felt like still having to be out in the field and having connections with our community and feeling as if they were the front lines, such as a soldier would be if they were, at war. So it was a very tough time for us all. I think that I continue to give our folks so much credit, the way that they were able to pivot and, still be of the mindset that they were going to be of value to their customers and to the community. And I can't speak for others, but my folks, they were just raring to go. They're like, nope, this is our job, director. We're going to do what we need to do. But I made it clear that I was there for them. Whenever they needed to talk, they needed to come in and have a conversation safely. And they needed to reach out to me or just daily check-ins. I did that. And I felt as if that was resounding for them, that they actually saw somebody that cared about their mental and physical well-being, even though we continue to have a job to do. But all in all, Michael, that was a learning experience for us and as a country as a whole, because of course we haven't seen anything like this in almost a century, right? For us to go through a pandemic where it was wiping out folks at an unbelievable rate, people who were able to actually recover from the virus still in some instances have some long-term health issues. So it was a paralyzing effect for us all, but I continue to give our folks kudos and acknowledgement for being able to work their way through it and still stay connected to themselves and to their community in such an uncertain time.
Thank you for that. My next question is, only have two left, what's next for yourself?
Wow. Next for me is to see the vision that I implemented a year ago through. And what that means is to see our Families First and Prevention Act come to fruition, and to see what that's going to mean for our communities going forward, for us to transition to a place where we can ask for exit from our consent decree that we've been in for the last 15 years, that I'm pretty sure a lot of people are aware of, but we're making some really great changes and transformative changes that I believe that we will be positioned to at least ask for exit here the next year or so, but also just continue to be that model of hope for our communities and also our staff going forward. So making sure that if and when we have the opportunity to do so, that I'm going to be more visible in our communities. Just kind of harkening back to your question about COVID, one of the things that that really disgusts me about this whole pandemic and period is that I'm not able to go out in the community as much as I would like to. I really want to have boots on the ground, go talk to our community partners, go talk to the schools and hospitals and our social workers out in the field to kind of roll out the message of what we're doing as a department. And it doesn't have the same feel or effect over Zoom. And I get it, we have to do what we have to do to keep safe, but I'm really looking forward to, that's my next step, really looking forward to being out in the community more.
Thank you for that. And lastly, what tools, tips, what tools or tips do you have um, to offer the audience, whether they be social workers, people in care, stakeholders, or what have you?
Mhm. You know, find your why and find what keeps you centered and find people around you that can be allies in this work. One of the things I've said, Michael, is that, if I step in the room and, I'm the most passionate and I'm the most smart person in that room, I need to find another room because that room has met my needs. I don't need, to be a part of that group anymore. And they can't assist me. They're of no value to me if I'm the smartest and the most compassionate person in that room. But one thing I will say is that I work with a group of compassionate, intelligent, innovative leaders that are always pushing the envelope and pushing me to do better and be better. That's why I'm so optimistic about, our future as a department. And I think that we are really going to achieve some great things together as a team. The only other thing I would, land on is that don't ever take it as if you can't grow. Don't ever take it as if you can't be better and do better. One of the old Chinese proverbs that I use routinely is that the best time to plant a tree was 25 years ago. The next best time is now. So, don't worry about what wasn't done or could have been done years ago. It's always an opportunity. When you wake up that day, it's always an opportunity to do better and be better. You just have to find what keeps you centered and what your why is.
Wow. Well, it has been an honor and privilege to have you on. And I'm sure this won't be the last time that we talk,
Not at all.
and collab together. Um,
Michael,
any
if I can, just one thing before we wrap up, I just want to say thank you, just for your intestinal fortitude, just for your leadership, just for your voice. You've been a part of, numerous conversations, speaking circles, listening circles, and, your voice, your input, just your wherewithal has been nothing short of amazing and astounding. I've talked to my team about you numerous times, and I just, every time I leave a conversation or space with you, I just leave more edified and I just feel more energized. So I just want to say thank you for you just being you.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And I was just about to ask any last comments,
No, that's
that
it.
you
That's it.
have.
That's it, sir. I just appreciate you a ton and thank you for the honor. And I'm just honored to be a part of this. And don't ever hesitate to reach out to myself or Derek or Rachel, anyone within our team, for us to circle back and come back. We feel privileged to do just that.
Thank you. So as I end out, as I always say, COVID is out there, is doing this thing. There's other things out there too now, as we watch in the news.
Right.
So please take the right precautions. Please be safe. Protect your village. By protecting your village, you protected all of us. So just stay healthy. Please stay safe. There's a lot of different things talked about mental health. I always talk about it. So if you're in need of services or resources, please take that initiative within yourself to reach out to those services. We all have our part to play in fighting the different stigmas and stables culturally or society-wise. So we all need help. We all need somebody to talk to at a time, and there's nothing wrong with that. Therapists need therapists, counselors need counselors, So take that initiative, get the help, get the support that you need, There's also a lot of different things talked about. And one of the biggest things about my podcast is, starting those conversations, having those conversations in the home, and keeping that dialogue going. It's one thing to just listen to this and then that's it. But, listen to this and have those conversations with your family members, your friends, your kids, and what have you, and keep that dialogue going because, some of the issues and some of the things that we're working on, it takes all of us to bridge the gaps and the disparities that are happening within all of our systems, not just the child welfare system. So all in all, you guys have a great night, great morning, great evening, great whenever you're listening to this. This has been Resilient Voices and Beyond. Thank you.